All right, so now that we've gotten our feet wet with some animation and we've had to engage in some brute force techniques, we're ready to make our lives a bit easier by creating a rig. So let's open up our ball scene. I'm going to open it back into the ball scene here, modeling and texturing, and just go to my last texture file. This will be considered our character. We can clear out our light because we're not going to need that, and we can go ahead and do a save scene as. I'm going to create a new folder in my ball subdirectory here called rig. And I'm going to name this ball underscore rig underscore 01. Hit save as. Okay, so before we dive into rigging, we need to think, what does this need to do? You can spend a lot of time making a rig do things it's not supposed to, okay? So when it comes to rigging, rigs can either be very complex, like a full-blown character or a crazy dragon or a creature like an octopus, or they can be very simple, like our bouncing ball here. The important thing is they allow us to achieve whatever the goal is we need to achieve so the animator can make this thing move and they can do it with some ease. Okay, so before you set out to create a rig, it can be a good idea to just kind of think about what ideas are going to be needed to make this rig work. So what are some things that would be easier for our particular rig? Well, it might be easier if when we had the ball squash, it squashed onto the ground and it stretched from the ground. That would be good. So that's a good start. What are some of the other challenges that we potentially faced? Well, it'd be nice if instead of the ball starting in the middle of the grid, it started on top of the grid. So this gives us just a few things to do to make this a little bit easier, which is moving it from the bottom of the grid up to the top and making it so that instead of squashing from the midpoint, it squashes from the bottom point. There's other aspects of this we might get to as well. For example, it might be useful if the squash, instead of being scale-based, was actually just a slider like transform. So if squash had its own attribute, that might be nice. And we might take a look at that. That's a little bit complicated, but hey, get our feet wet. Let's start by tackling this challenge first, because this is mainly just technical things that will help you out in all aspects of 3D, not just rigging and animation. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to move this so that it sits flat on the grid. In other words, so its butt down here rests on the grid lines. A way we can do that is by switching our pivot point and moving it. When we talk about an object's pivot is the location it manipulates from. So by turning on a Move Tool gizmo, I can see the pivot of my object here, and that's going to be where it moves, scales, and rotates from. So when I move this object, we don't really notice it's moving from this point because movement's just movement. But if we switch to something like rotation, you'll see the ball is currently revolving around itself. And when I scale, you'll see it's scaling flat to that point rather than anywhere else. We can move this using the D key on our keyboard and being in a movement space. So if you hit D, you'll see that your gizmo switches, and what you're now in is the pivot editing mode. You can then move this to another location, and you can hit D again to set this. You'll see now when I rotate this, this now revolves around this point, which could be useful if we were creating an orbiting planet or object. And it also scales to this point, which I don't know a context where that would be good, but you could probably think of one. Now, we wanted to solve our particular issue, which is we wanted to scale flat to this point. So we can pair this with a selection mode. When we hit D, we can snap this to the vertices here by holding down the V key. So if we hold V, that's going to change to the snap to vertex mode. And what we can try and do is snap this to that bottom vertice. So while you're holding V, you can grab the middle area here to free move this. You'll see when I hit V, that turns into a circle. And now as I move this, you'll see this is snapping to the vertices. And if I get to the very bottom here, you'll see we get that there. Now, I didn't mention how I'm moving this. You might have caught it up here in my hotkey section. I'm holding the middle mouse button to move this. You can also click as well. Doesn't really matter. You can use the left click there. So middle mouse button or left click will let you move that. And once you have it in place, you can hit D, and that's now the pivot. So now this is going to squash to that point. So we've already solved one of our problems, making it squash to that location. That's going to make our life a lot easier as an animator, because now we're not going to need to counter animate it. However, I now want it to also be up here on the grid. That's where I want it to be sitting. So how do we get that there? Well, we can press W to get to our move tool. And this time we can hold down X, which is snap to grid. All right, so V was snap to vertex. We're going to hold down X now to snap to grid, and it works the same way, but instead of snapping to vertices, it's going to snap to the grid lines that you see running along here. So if we go ahead and hold that X key and grab this arrow and move straight up, we can move smack dab onto the center point of our scene. And now it would be a lot easier to animate this, right? However, there's still some things that might be nice. For example, it would be nice if every time we zeroed this out, it came back to the 0 point. And this is actually standard practice for characters. So let me get that back to 0 by holding X and moving up. When you're constructing a model or a rig, you want to get it into position and then do something called freeze transforms. And what that's going to do is it's going to take your transforms, and at the position it's currently at, it's going to set that to be its 0 point. So when you zero out its transforms, it goes right back where it's supposed to go. This is done with characters to reset their position. It's also done inside of large-scale environments. Let's say you have an object in a corner and everything's laid out exactly where it needs to be. It's perfect, and you don't want anyone to be able to mess up that placement. You can freeze transforms, and then if anyone accidentally grabs it, you can zero it out to get it right back into the position it needs to be. Now, the way this is going to work is you're going to want to select your object and come up here to modify. And since I've given you the name, you can probably already find it. You're going to come in here to modify and freeze transforms. And that's going to make it so this is now the 0 point of our ball. So now if I squash this down here, you can see it's very easy to squash. If I move this up, it's very easy to get this back to being flat on the ground, even when squashed. So we solved pretty much all of our problems here. All right, so now that we've gotten the basic problem solved, let's go ahead and take a look at doing this in a more complex way that could solve multiple problems for us. When it comes to animating, a general rule is you don't actually want to animate on the geometry. The reason why is it might need to change. You might need to edit something like the UVs. So what we like to do is create control rigs that are separate from the geometry, so that way it's not disturbed. If it needs to be edited, it can. We can achieve the same effects we've done here with a group rather than the geometry, since what we're doing is we're modifying the transform information. So if you come to your ball and you hit Control G, you can actually group this. And what's cool is because we already have this zeroed out, this group will already be there. You'll see if I take the group here and I scale it, it flattens. If I move it, it moves from this location. If I rotate, rotates from this location. It's already good to go. And what's nice is the ball inside is also good to go. So we can go ahead and name this group here ball_rig, and that will give us something that we can work with in a very basic system that makes it so we don't affect our ball. What's also cool about this is if I wanted to bring in something else like a cube, I could actually have the cube operate the same way. Now, we haven't talked about visibility yet with objects, but let's say I want this sphere to be invisible. I could set that to 0, and this will be invisible now. And I could move my cube up and freeze its transforms. Using the same techniques we used beforehand, you'll see that this group also affects the cube the same way. And what's cool is if we were to animate this, which I don't encourage you to do if you're following along, don't do this part. This is just a demo. I don't want you to mess up your little mini rig. But any change we make to this, I'll just do a quick animation here. is animating the group so everything inside of the group receives the same animation, regardless if it's the ball or if it's the sphere. And if I turn that on, you can see those operating together. So this gives us quite a bit of flexibility. I'm going to go ahead and delete that cube there. And we'll go ahead and leave this be for our ball rig. Make sure if you did do any animation on that, you delete it. And let's go ahead and save. So that's going to give us some really basic tools we can use to help with animation. As a challenge, I want you to create a basic rig for your ball. So what I want you to do is try moving those pivots, try out the snap to vertex, get it so that the pivot point is right on the bottom of your ball. Make sure that the bottom of your ball is snapped to that X grid. And once you get that set up, freeze its transforms. Make sure you freeze the transforms first so it's in place. Then you can nest it in a group, and we're going to modify that group to give it a bit more control. So go ahead and pause now and try that out, and then I'll see you in the next one.